Dagmar, I'm founder of Designers Atelier. Today I am here with Nathan MEYERS. Nathan's the founder of Nathan's Earth, an entrepreneur in numerous fields. Nathan managed to turn many of his hobbies into paying roles, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so from an insect collector to a design guru in South Africa, to a founder of an art online shop, to a wine club in London. Nathan had kindly accepted to come and speak at Transformative Art of Design Philosophy about evening, which was devoted to Salvador Dali. And today I'm here with Nathan to ask him some questions so we can find out more about his own journey of self-discovery.
Thanks, Han.
Hi, Nathan. Well,
thanks for the intro. Yes.
Thanks for the intro. Thanks for the wine. It's amazing.
Good. It's from South Africa, of course.
Wonderful. So, how did your own journey of self-discovery started? We've mentioned the insect collector, a design guru back in South Africa, to a art online gallery, and then the art shop. How all that came into existence?
It's a very strange thing with me, Dagmar. Basically, I started with quite a lot of nature-orientated hobbies when I was very young. When I was still at school, I was very lucky that my mother actually, moved us right across the street from a very, very prominent bird sanctuary, they used to call it, in Cape Town.
Okay.
And so I started with bird watching, and sort of moving on to botanizing, which is going to look for flowers, and eventually doing something more specialized, which was actually collecting insects.
Yeah.
And
why insects?
Why insects? Well, because I just find them so fascinating. I just, I think there's something fascinating about every aspect of nature and the environment. But when you get something, I've always had, my mother always used to call it my power of observation.
Okay.
And it's just always, it's always been something that I've been interested in, actually going right down to sort of ground level and just observing things and interpreting them. So I think in that, insects really interested me, because I used to just watch them and just, go about their daily business where people just completely ignore them. So I think that is what really got me into insects specifically, rather than really carrying on with birds and becoming an ornithologist or a botanist or anything like that. Because of course, in many cases these insects are interacting with plants and birds and various other aspects of the environment anyway. So for me, that just seemed the obvious thing to get into, really. And so I was very lucky, having lived opposite this nature reserve, where I could actually really go and practice my hobby every day after school. So.
And it's kind of interesting, because obviously we know that Dali was very much inspired by the coastline where he was born, and the sort of the artwork was taking on almost surrealist shapes, but it was all based on what he was surrounded with, or the coastline that he managed to grow up. So obviously the nature did play an important role in his life.
Yeah.
And as we both know, he loved incorporating insects into his artwork.
Specifically ants, yeah.
Specifically ants. Tell us about ants.
Well, ants, they're really interesting. I mean, in Dali's work, they often sort of represent death and, sort of very macabre decay, exactly. And obviously in nature, they are, there are a lot of things that actually, in nature decay, specific matter. But I think ants are the one thing that we can really see. A lot of bacteria obviously do that job in nature, but I think we see ants doing that job because they obviously take a lot of aspects, things like dead bodies and so forth, and they're actually taken underground. So I think that aspect does actually interest a lot of us as humans. So I think, you know, the way that Dali's used it is not necessarily, it's not necessarily an original concept, but I think he did use it, you know, because of the elements he used in all of his artwork. It really is a very interesting feature, using the ants for that sort of specific, in that specific way. So I think that, you know, as far as ants are concerned as well, we often do identify a lot with them because they're a social species of insect. And you know, they represent the way in which sort of human beings and other social species really do things as well. If you just look at the fact, you know, that they've got this royal chamber where things happen with the king and the queen, you know, I think we really do identify with them as a social species as well. You know, they've got
they've got a social structure in place in a way.
Yeah, exactly like we do. You know, so, yeah.
Okay, well, we have mentioned or covered more or less the nature and insects and ants. You have also mentioned that you were involved in design in South Africa. Would you be able to tell us a bit more about that? Yes,
well, basically, I mean, I started off again at school doing quite a lot of internet-based design. So I was actually doing a lot of web design and sort of, you know, business cards and print and stuff like that. And when I left school, I was doing a little bit of that work for clients, and that sort of developed into a business actually doing all aspects of design. So in other words, you know, doing the web-based stuff and then actually doing interior and exterior design as well.
I mean, all I can say is when someone's got an eye for design, it's reflected in many different fields. You can't separate that. So obviously we can see. We can see a style in this space here, okay?
So I think that sort of really was one of those things I really got very interested in as well. And my partner at the time was very into interior and exterior sort of textures and, you know, things as well. So I learned a lot from him actually, just you know, just dealing with sort of combining things. And because I was very good at it on the computer, but there are certain, you know, aspects where the computer really do help you a lot, of course, you know. And when you're doing interiors, it really is a lot different because you have to really use your eye to put things together. So that is really, and we had a few clients in South Africa, guest houses and boutique hotels and things, and we were helping them with all aspects again. So with their interior, exterior stuff as well as their marketing. So you know, we did a lot of photography as well for them, and so, you know, and again, that obviously is still something I use a lot, especially, you know, obviously doing my own apartment, and you know, I still do the photography, of course, as well, and again, you know, that comes through I think the way in which I actually photograph, because I photograph insects obviously most prominently, and that's what Nathan's Earth is about really, but I think that there's an aspect of design in there because I always use some element of the insect's design and makeup, and I focus on that. And I know a lot of people do that.
Are you sort of talking here about the colour or composition or?
Yeah, not really, not either of those. A lot of people I know, when you know they look at, you know, insect eyes, for example. A lot of photographers focus on things like dragonfly eyes, where you can actually see the hexagons and so forth. I think I try and sort of turn that on its head a little bit and use an element that's not usually.
It's not being focused
quite
on.
Exactly. So things like a butterfly's proboscis piercing a flower, for example. I think that sort of thing just is much more interesting in my opinion. You know, just rather than having a butterfly on a flower, feeding on a flower, actually really focusing on that one element where it really is using that proboscis to actually go really deep down into a flower and sucking up nectar, for example. Or things like grasshoppers, where you really don't necessarily see people focusing on their mandibles, you know.
Yeah.
They really are very, very interesting little things.
So you're literally bringing different things to people's attention
Yes,
from
yeah.
nature or
Yeah.
from the world of insects, which is great.
Yeah, well, some would say. They can look
Okay.
quite scary, but yeah.
I see. Well, how well did you do in school? We know that Dali was brave enough to say he was actually expelled from a school because he was brave enough to say that none of the teachers were competent enough to examine him. So tell us about your experience from school.
Well, I can't say it was quite the same as Dali's, but there were definitely elements of that, of course. I went to a private school as well in Cape Town, where we were very much left to being individuals as well. It was a Steiner school, so of course that has a lot to do with my thinking around business and being free and, you know, all sorts of things as well that come into my daily life.
Artistic vision and
yes.
yeah.
So of course a lot of that, I think it helped a lot having teachers that really understood us as individuals, which I think is why I probably...
Extremely important.
Exactly. And that's why I think I didn't really rebel to the point where Dali did at school. However, if I did, because I am quite a sort of a free thinker and I think very differently from most people.
I think what happened in his case was he knew he was very good.
Yeah.
He knew it, and perhaps he was comparing himself with the work that his teachers were able to produce, and he was just very self-confident, and he knew that he was really good. So perhaps some of the teachers weren't at his level.
That is probably right. I'm afraid I don't, at school I certainly didn't think of myself as being good academically at all. So I don't think there was really any of that. I
mean, the artistic elements are very evident in in the way you express yourself, so in work you do.
But I think being quite an arty school, you know, that I managed to actually use that a lot at school anyway. You know, so I think I didn't have that same sort of issue where I really needed to go against my teachers to express myself. You know?
Okay, so that means that you really were in the right environment, or in the environment that was really encouraging your artistic interests.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now, online art gallery, tell us about that. Obviously we know Dali had lots of fun being an artist, okay, despite of the fact that he was, in his artwork we see burning giraffes, you know, melting clocks, decayed ants. He had an amazing time as an artist.
Yeah.
And we know that he once said, I think I am going to die of an overdose of satisfaction. Okay, how many people can truly say that?
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, I think that, you know, I started a very small online art gallery, and I started working with artists. Yeah. And I have to say it wasn't an easy job.
Tell us about it.
Well, working with artists, and well, you know, just jumping forward, I'm working with a lot less artists than I started working with initially, for various reasons. It's a very difficult thing to do, working with artists, and I think
main reasons.
Well, I think one of the main reasons certainly is that artists want to be artists, and that is all they want to do. They want to produce art, and that is where they want to stop. You know, they don't. They certainly, a lot of them don't have any business vision, which is fair enough, because you know you don't necessarily need to sell work. That's why you have agents. But I think that there's a point at which an artist will suddenly decide, okay, you know, I've produced work, and that's where things will stop. Yeah. And I think that is, you know, they need to go a little bit further and say, well, you know, I'll actually go a little bit. I need to go out there and actually express my vision to my potential customers as well as an artist.
Would you say that they're perhaps reluctant to let go of the artwork that they've created?
Oh yeah, certainly.
There is this attachment, and obviously that is stopping
it's a
them
piece of them, really.
that is stopping them from sharing, their message through art because they're unable to share it with the world and eventually let go of it. So you'd say that's perhaps the issue number one.
I think so, yeah. So I think certainly there is a, obviously a sort of a lack of business vision, but I think people are very interested in seeing what the artist is really like, and that's what the shows that I do now for Nathan's art shop are actually almost completely only shows where the artist is able to be there and able to chat. I won't do a show now without the artist being there, where the artist can actually chat with potential customers.
Okay,
because
so
I think people are that interested to know where these artworks are really drawn from.
So obviously you've created a platform where you're happy to introduce different works of art, but you want to make it really interactive, so it's not just an artwork, but you want a real person to present their artwork.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think people are really interested in that sort of thing, and artists don't think they are. Someone like Dali, for example, he was really eccentric, and he was out there, and he was really causing a bit of a stir.
Oh yes.
So
he ended up on the cover of Times. He was only in his 30s, which was a great achievement for a Spanish artist in his 30s.
Yeah.
So he definitely knew how to draw attention to himself, and again, as I mentioned earlier, he knew how to have a good time.
Yeah, and I think that so many artists think, okay, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to have a good time, but it really is. You know what they say. No publicity is bad publicity. So I think that there is that element of, well, just do something as an artist. Just do something to draw attention to yourself. I think it will work in your favour either way. So I think that's really, a lot of artists sort of make the mistake of sort of painting, becoming a recluse, and that's that's where they want to leave things. And I think that's a big mistake. So.
What would be your advice to artists who think that it is okay to be artists and it is okay at the same time to struggle while being an artist? Because I have actually met artists, and I'm surprised how many of them think it's okay to live that way, and I don't understand why.
I don't understand.
It's almost like they don't want to be earning money for the artwork that they're creating. So.
Well, I think there's an element of thinking that you're not a true artist if you are making money from your artwork.
So it's perceived as bad to be making money from an artwork.
Yeah. So it's a part of you, really. And I mean, I'm a photographer, so I'm not sort of slaving over something for 12 hours, mixing colours and things. So I don't really understand, what painters go through. But I think they really have that feeling that it is really a part of them, this artwork that they're producing. And to part with it is to be judged by somebody. So this is going to be hanging in somebody's living room or bathroom or bedroom. And they're going to be judging you by having that on their wall. And I think that that's a very difficult thing for an artist to deal with. So my advice, really, is that I think artists should find somebody that brings the best out in them. The artists that I've been dealing with over the past few years now.
So if they don't have the ability to be that themselves, then perhaps they could get themselves into a relationship with someone like Gala in Dali's case, or find themselves an agent.
Exactly, yeah. Because of course that, we all know that a lot of the controversy surrounding Dali's work was because of Gala. She really just sort of stirred the pot a little bit, sometimes too much. So I think, you really need somebody that compliments you in that way. It doesn't have to be a business person or anything. I'm not saying that these artists should go to a gallery necessarily. Find somebody that is able to really talk about your work passionately as an artist, and go out there and chat to friends about it and so forth. And I think then that is when the artist will really realize that they actually have something. So that would be the best advice I can give to artists is, try and find somebody But as Dali did with Gala.
I think they've had an amazing arrangement, and they were just so good for each other. So she wasn't only his business head in a way, but also a muse and an inspiration. And as we know, we find her in many of his paintings.
I'd like to think that I'm a few people's inspiration, but I don't think I am yet. So not quite there yet, but one day. So.
Yeah, so that's power of a really strong bond, perhaps, and obviously I think that relationship was able to survive, because obviously we know in a creative world, people don't tend to stay with their partners for a very long. I think Dali was an unusual case in the sense that he had created a very strong bond with Gala that lasted decades, and obviously it was a very, what word would we use?
Well, I think it was definitely, besides being quite unique, it was very symbiotic. They really did.
They shared the same values,
and they were really, each one of them had strong points, and each one, of course, had weak points, like we all do. And but I think they really complemented each other's shortcomings, and I think that's why it worked, really.
Yeah.
So.
We know that the less perhaps famous arrangements or attempts happened when some of the actually latest Dali's works are quite questionable, because he was apparently encouraged by Gala to sign them without them being painted as yet. So obviously she made sure that they were earning money and that they were earning a lot, so they could actually maintain a lifestyle that they truly enjoyed. Okay, now we know that Dali was actually, again, a greatest example of a self-expression that permeated everything. So if you remember, his house was full of unusual objects, and obviously it almost looked like you just stepped out of his artwork and it was just into some extended space where it was again just about him, and that was the purpose of the group, to help people realize their unique nature, and because everything really we touch has our mark on it.
Absolutely.
So if it comes, we did touch on the interior design that you've done in South Africa, but and obviously we can see your way of expressing yourself through clothing, and we're now in Nathan's space, so you get the better idea of who Nathan is as a person. Tell us about your own space and the importance of artwork in your own space.
Dagmar, if I had my way, this place would be filled with dead insects and jars full of, formaldehyde, and it would just be, this would actually be a museum.
Okay.
I think I'm a Gemini as well, so I've got sort of two sides, really. So what you see currently is my sort of stylish side, and I think that
there's a darker side that wants to come up on the surface. Okay.
Yeah, there's the Bushman in me, which really would come out if I were living in South Africa, I think. So this is my London self that you see.
Okay.
So welcome to London, and I think
really cool copper lamp. I can't help it. I love this lamp.
That's fabulous. I love it. So and I think if I really were in South Africa currently, I would be really using a lot of my knowledge about preserving specimens and using them as sort of my household decor. So I think a lot of my design would incorporate a lot more of my nature self.
Can we revisit in 6 months'
I think
time?
So. I think possibly.
Some adjustments need to be made.
I think so.
Okay.
I do find it difficult to incorporate stuff like that, obviously, in my life in London. Having very sort of limited, I suppose, natural spaces where one can I live across a green space, but I think it's very difficult to take that further and actually work with conservators here, and you know, like I used to in South Africa. So I think that I would be very Dali-like, I think, in my own space, if I got the chance.
How much time do you need?
You really want to see this, don't you?
Yes.
You want to see it happen.
Oh yes. Because my personal belief is that if people are fully themselves in their own space, you know, their own space will help them to move forward with, you know, whatever it is that they've got to bring into this world. So it seems like there's an aspect of you that needs to come out within a space. 6 months?
With your help, I'm sure that we can make this happen. And yes, we will review it in 6 months, and you know, let's
watch this space.
Another session. Yeah, no, seriously, I think that I would love to incorporate a lot more of that into my space. So it's just how to make it happen, really, in London. So
you'll find a way.
I think so. So.
Where's a will, there's a way. Is that the same? Have I said it correctly?
Yes.
So obviously, I mean, Dali's interior, I mean, when I first came across his interior, I was like, this is amazing, you know, because he was just, you know, fully true to himself within the space. It really felt like, you know, the space was part of him. The artwork was, you know, you could, whatever you looked, you could see him. And I think that's what many people tend to struggle with.
I think so. I mean, art is a very strange thing. It's very individual. I'm lucky enough to deal with quite a few artists. So I've got a few things hanging that are sort of just pieces that I currently haven't learned from these various artists. I've got a very, very small private collection, which is stuff that I actually purchased from some of the artists as well. And so when I really like something, so obviously all of the artists that I deal with, I love their work, but when something is so individual to me that I simply can't part with it, you know, I simply cannot sell some stuff to customers. That is when I negotiate.
What if your house burned down?
I don't know.
That's the thing, because we've donated one meetup actually to literally, the question was, what would you do if you've lost everything? I mean, it was a meetup about Viktor Frankl, you know, so just being stripped of everything, including possession and things like that. So again, it's just the question of attachment comes back to surface.
That is a very interesting question, actually.
Because obviously when people collect artwork, they're collecting it for, they want to keep it and perhaps maintain it, or they look at it as an investment, depending on what sort of level of art collector they are. But again, it's accumulating, and it's like a collector's personality is very different, because these are the people who are curious, and also they know that if they get something, then other person is more or less out of question. You know what I mean? So they want to get there first. So they also have a very competitive streak in terms of wanting to get something that they set themselves for.
I think that firstly, there is definitely a collector in me. And obviously having dealt with, you know, specifically insect collections and other sort of museum specimens in South Africa. I think there is definitely a side of me that loves to collect things. And they're not necessarily beautiful things either. They are things that I think, again, coming back to the art, that actually are very individual to me, something that just gives me a feeling where I can say, oh, you know, this actually makes me feel very good, and I'd like to look at this.
It's in the eyes of the beholder.
It is. So, you know, it's completely, you know, I
love snakes.
Oh, no. Stop.
Okay.
Yeah, please. No spiders either. So I think there's that thing for me of really liking, I find certain insects really fascinating, and I've obviously got sort of a few things that I hang on the wall, but there are certain things that other people will find beautiful, sort of certain butterflies and so forth, that they love a specimen of, that I would just think, well, I just see no point having it on my wall, So I think, it's a very, very individual thing. So having said that, though, I do have sort of a collection of artworks as well that is not, it's a sort of just stuff that's it's sort of in between collections currently, that I just think sort of work with the space. Because I think that there's something to be said for each type of collector. You've got those, as you were mentioning earlier, you've got those collectors that make purchases for their investment. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think obviously art is something very personal, but at the end of the day, it can be decoration, as well. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with people just hanging something because it actually works in the room.
Ideally, we'd like people to collect for the love of art.
Yeah.
In an ideal world.
In an ideal world, yeah, which it isn't. So it's definitely that would be the ideal thing for people to really sort of look at something every day and not get bored of it. Yeah. But that doesn't always happen, and I think everybody has that thing where they just sort of put something up because it looks gorgeous on the wall, and they never seem to change it. So So I think there's room for sort of every aspect of collecting, really, and I will certainly make sure I get some dead insects in here. And,
good, I'm really looking forward to that. Coming in 6 months' time to inspect.
I think there's definitely room for some surrealism actually in my life, because that's probably one of the aspects that I am missing.
I'm not sure if you remember, we have mentioned, Dali was also hugely criticised for the fact of depicting Adolf Hitler in some of his artworks. And when I was doing research on Dali, I came across an information and he said he personally thought that Adolf Hitler was a great surrealist. And as we know, Adolf Hitler actually wanted to become an artist himself.
Yes.
And I thought that was very interesting.
Very interesting, yes. So you kind of think, well, did he sort of turn out like he did sort of through lack of creative expression, possibly?
Perhaps, because that's how I understood what was said, or, how kind of Dali perceived his actions. It was a lack of, a creative expression, so he found an outlet.
Yeah, as you do,
As you do, as bizarre as it sounds. Okay, now, we're drinking here this fabulous South African wine. Tell us about the wine club.
Oh, the wine club, well,
By the way, we're here with a wine expert.
Some would say.
Some would say.
It's a very interesting thing actually. When I came to London, I was obviously working as the designer that I was in South Africa, because that was the thing to do, I'd left behind the natural sciences because there's not much of that in London and it's too competitive, and so I started working for a little while for a fashion magazine. And I decided after a few months that I just couldn't deal with the fact that everybody at the fashion magazine, I won't generalize about the industry, but everybody was a diva, basically.
Oh, I see.
So I just wasn't quite in the same league, I'm afraid. So I just decided that I was going to get into something that I really enjoyed, and my friends actually suggested, well, why don't you just get professionally into wine?
Okay,
And
so
I was
was
drinking
that a friend's suggestion?
Yeah, it was.
Really?
It was, yeah.
Oh,
I was
wow.
drinking a lot of it because I was always interested in learning about wine. And
Mm-hmm.
in South Africa, we've got sort of a few of what we call the noble grapes, things like Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Shiraz. And when I came to London, I realised this is so much more to wine than we know in South Africa. You know, suddenly you could get Tempranillo from Spain, and you get Zinfandel from California. You know, and I just simply had to learn more about it. So I got myself a job with Majestic Wine.
Okay.
And which is obviously now one of the biggest retailers in the country. And having sort of worked with them for 5 months, I'm very, very grateful for the training that I received there, because it was probably the best company I could have started with. I decided.
How long have you been involved in a wine business?
So 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just I was with Majestic for 5 months, and I decided to open up my own business after that. Being an entrepreneur, obviously, I always think, you know, how can I get out of a job situation?
Working for someone to working for.
And you know, I've always had my own business in South Africa. So this is just something that came naturally to me. I said, well, you know, what can I do to really start my own business? And I saw a small gap in the market, which was basically that a lot of young people, like myself at the time, when I was working for Majestic, were just left completely out of the loop, really. If you were a young person, you were too scared to go to a wine shop to ask for recommendations for fear of being judged, because you didn't know about wine. So, then you didn't really want to buy it online because you were generally buying a bottle at a time to drink straight away. So your only option was really to go to the supermarket and shop from the discount shelf. And a lot of people are still doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that what I'm sort of trying to do at the moment is really, you know, grab those people and say to them, you know, there is a way that you can spend £6 on a good bottle of wine. And not only will it be a good bottle of wine, it will be exactly what you'd like to drink. You know. So if you don't like Chardonnay, we don't even have to go there. So we'll give you the exact flavours in the wine that you like to associate with. So
we know about you that you're not only selling wine, you're actually educating people on wine.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Well, I've got a little wine school running, which
Yep.
So I've got a little wine school running, and that is a very, very sort of, I do little small sessions of about 20 to 24 people at a time, where I just I do the basics of wine tasting with them, and I think the revelation that people come to is, you know, we really don't have to be a professional to enjoy wine. Every time, I love seeing people's faces when they realise that, you know, doing the swirl and the sniff and the slurp in particular doesn't necessarily make the wine taste any better to them. This is a very personal thing.
Yeah.
And I really love that aspect of teaching people about wine, because I think so many people think that there is a right way and a wrong way. There isn't. There's your way.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about, because it's a very, very personal thing. So,
Yeah.
So I think then some people go away thinking, well, actually, I can now, even if I do continue buying my wine from the supermarket, I will
have a better understanding of what to choose. Yeah. Better options. Okay. Now, we now understand that you, as I mentioned right at the beginning, you have a variety of interests that are currently occupying you.
Yeah.
What is driving you? I mean, an incredible amount of drive is required to, you know, run all these businesses. What is it?
Well, luckily I manage to really incorporate them all into one business, to be honest. And that's I think what makes it a lot easier, because although I you know, one day, and this has always been the case in South Africa, you know, one day I was in a lab, you know, sort of working with insects. The next day I was out in the field catching insects. And the following day I was, you know, designing a website for somebody. So I've always been a bit of a chameleon when it came to dealing with business in general, and just the aspects of my business life as well. So I think my philosophy is that if you can do, let's put it this way, if you can do, you know.
Okay.
So basically, if you feel like being an entomologist today, you know, find out how to do it, and you know, work with those aspects, and actually just, you know, become the amateur entomologist you want to be. If you want to be an ornithologist, do the same thing. So you know, if you want to be a scientist, do that. If you want to be a fashion designer, you know, find a way to do it. And I think what's really important for me is that, you know, firstly, life is too short to be doing the same thing. Because I see so many people that have gone through life that I've turned 40 and I've decided, well, actually, for 20 years I've done exactly the same thing. You know, I've spent 6 years studying. And my point is, well, why not just do it now? You know, I'm 31. And in my 20s, this is what I was doing. And in my 30s, this is what I'm going to continue doing. Why not just do it now? So by the time that I'm 40, actually, I think I'll be able to combine so many of the aspects that I've actually been dealing with over the past 20 years. And I'll be quite, you know, really well equipped with just, you know, various things in business, and sort of knowing myself as well, because I think that's very important. When people turn 40, they often think, well, who am I? I think I'm going to, well, hopefully, be able to say to myself, and you'll have to come back in 9 years, I'm afraid. So I think the idea is for me to come of age really at 40 and say, well, I'm now going to take everything that I've learned over the last 20 years and intertwine them. So I'm actually going to be a winemaker, and I'm going to be retailing wine as well. I'm going to be living on a wine farm where some sort of ecotourism aspect is going to come into play as well. So I'll be able to actually do the nature stuff that I've always loved doing. And there'll be, you know, an art gallery on the premises as well. I'll be able to continue my photography. And I think just, you know...
It's important to plant seeds well, and then...
Exactly.
It's also about commitment, so take it to the next level and the next level and the next level, so... So I think that is really my focus, is that, you know, in a few years' time I want to see everything coming together. And I think that's my drive. Now, tell us, was there anything in your childhood that you perceived missing?
Put me on the spot here, Dan. I haven't thought of this really well.
It's just from the research I've done, I've noticed that, you know, what we do, what we're passionate about, is important to us because we perceive the lack of it at a very early age.
I think it was the opposite with me,
Was
really.
it?
I think it was the complete opposite,
Okay.
in fact. Because my mother was extremely influential in the way that I currently do things. You know? So she was, I think my mother was very similar. You see, a little bit of background of my mother, she was a nun, a Catholic nun, before she met my father. And I think I am allowed to say this on YouTube. But yeah, she was a nun before she met my father.
Where did they meet? It's not a secret.
At the convent, as far as I understand.
Oh, I see.
He was a teacher, actually.
Oh, wow.
At the school across the street. And basically that's how they met.
Incredible.
It's freak story, isn't it?
Okay.
So, you know, so my mother was a nun, she went from being a teenage nun to into her 20s, decided that it wasn't really for her.
After she met your father?
After she met my father.
Okay.
You know, they obviously got married, had 3 kids. And my mother's always been that sort of chameleon in my life, you know. So she's been the one that's always done sort of things that have been way out of other people's comfort zone. And you know, and also the change. I think I respect her a lot for being in a convent and being able to say, well, I need to make that change. I no longer want to be in that situation.
So really your mother's son.
I am. So I think that that's really where things started for me, and so I think there was nothing really missing. I think everything was. So
it was actually a nurturing environment where you were encouraged to pursue your interests and perhaps artistic interests. So that means that, you know, that kind of arrangement can speed the things up. Because you're not trying to work it out your own way and you know, doing stuff because you've had so much pain. You know, that would be perhaps or have been a major driving force for those that were less fortunate at the younger age. So
yeah, I mean, my mother was actually the one that was there, waking up with me at 6 in the morning, driving me, you know, up the mountain to go and do a bird count with the Cape Bird Club when I was 12, you know, and I think that sort of thing.
Was it your own choice or?
Yes, no, this was completely. I used to beg my mother to do this sort of thing, and I mean, she didn't complain at all. You know, so it was completely my own choice. These were my interests as a young boy to actually go and do that sort of thing. And again, I tried various other things as well. I played the violin and the piano, and you know, the violin wasn't for me. I lasted 3 months, and I did the sort of normal things that young boys are supposed to be doing. You know, playing sport and so forth. That wasn't for me, and so I ended up really getting into the whole environmental side of things as a young, a teenage boy in particular, and you know, I really do have my mother to thank for allowing me to take that further. And as I say, waking up at 6 in the morning with me, and you know, paying entry fees, and you know, that sort of thing.
So obviously a big commitment. So.
Yes, I think so.
And perhaps an unusual interest to have at an early age like that, but you know, obviously it paid off.
Yeah, it did. So,
okay. Now, if we were to perhaps ask you about a message that you would like to pass on to other people, what would your message be? I usually just say, what would your message be to humanity? You know, now, I mean, we're now in the age where we really are communicating with the whole world. So obviously those who are watching this video get an opportunity to hear your message. So
I think again, it's take something that you're really passionate about, and you know, believe that you can actually turn that into something profitable. It might take a while, you know, it's not easy. It's not easy, but you will find a way to actually change your life by just using a passion to do that. So I think, you know, so many people are stuck in sort of their 9-to-5 routine, especially in large cosmopolitan cities, and I think my drive could really belong to anybody. You know, there's no reason why you can't sort of think about yourself in 10 years time, or even 20 years time, and say, look, I'm going to try as many things as I possibly can, you know, in the next 20 years, and eventually everything will fit like a puzzle.
So just turning hobbies into money-making opportunity. I just had an idea as we were talking about this, because as we know, Dali wasn't only an artist, he was also a furniture designer, He was also a jewellery designer. He also designed a logo for Chupa Chups.
He did, yeah.
I know.
Which is still, yeah. It's still
I know.
amazing.
It's still, if you didn't know, make sure you check this out because it's Dali's design.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's just being open to opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the point. I think be open to opportunities that come to you, and you'll identify when there's something you want to do, and just really don't be scared to do it, because I think so many people are that they just sort of, you know, things just pass them by continuously, and they don't grab the opportunity that they're given today, and tomorrow you'll wake up unfortunately regretting it. So don't.
So you can make money from your hobbies.
I promise.